In the hills of Bethlehem, a young shepherd boy was anointed by the prophet Samuel. He was chosen by God for a great purpose. David and his family knew of this calling and helped prepare the young boy for the path ahead, for they understood that the trials of today may shape us for challenges we cannot yet imagine. He ran with fire in his legs and determination in his heart. But as the golden field swayed before him, it became clear to David, this race was not about speed alone. His older brother had chosen a different path, and David accepted his loss with grace. As his breath returned, he came to understand, true victory is not for the swift, but for those who discern the unseen way. David admired his big brother, who taught him that wisdom is what guides the feet of the faithful, and to never focus on a goal without first tracing the best path. As they walked home, his brother reminded him of the race's consequences. First, David would join their other brother for heavy labor on the high ridge. And then he would face the long, lonely watch over the sheep through the night. David climbed the steep trail, each step bringing him closer to the ridge and to the task that awaited him. High above the valley, his second older brother was a pillar of strength and care. He was a man of few words, as solid as the beams and stones he placed with purpose, each one reducing the risk of tumbling stones and landslides. David's hands trembled as he steadied a heavy beam on the narrow ridge. The height unnerved him, but the work demanded steady hands and focus. Strength was not only in the body, but in the foundation one laid beneath their feet. With time, his fear did not vanish, but his trust grew. By the final log set in place, he stood upon the very heights he once feared, admiring the work they had built. Before his night watch began, David returned home for a quiet moment with his mother at the garden. The garden had always been special to the family. Here, his mother had instilled in her children a simple truth: love and care will bring life to any seed. David watched as his mother passed on these lessons to his sister. Recognizing the unease in her son's heart, she offered him a small gift, meant to keep him company in the stillness of the night. And with a final embrace, she sent him off to confront the night with a lightened heart. David's father was a man of quiet strength. His hands had built their home, tended the fields, and guided his sons with steady wisdom. With patience and assurance, he pointed toward the sheep grazing by the lake near the ridge, a place David knew well. Before David left, his father offered a final word. If challenges come, don't act in haste. Instead, be mindful of what you've learned, because God prepares the willing if they take his hand. As David moved among the flock, his mother's gift rested close, and now he also carried the wisdom his father had given him. David quickly assembled the lyre, each piece falling into place, not just in his hands but in his heart. For this gift would not only fill quiet moments, but his music would calm kings and lift prayers to the heavens. Guided by the wisdom of the path and the trials of the ridge, David stood firm. As his voice rose and the bear's roar thundered, the mountain answered back. When the dust settled, his father said nothing at first. He understood the weight of the night, the fear that still clung to David's breath. But he also saw something greater, the battle that had been won, not just with strength, but with wisdom. As they walked toward the lake, David's heart remained heavy. He had faced the beast and lived, but something felt hollow. He had expected victory to feel triumphant, yet doubt crept in. Had he won, or had he simply been spared? His father's voice carried the steady calm of wisdom. You think courage is the absence of fear, but that is not true. Courage is moving forward, even when fear grips your heart. By the water's edge, his father knelt to stack a small tower of stones. Life is not held together by luck, he said. It's built piece by piece with the choices we make and held up by the faith we carry. He invited David to knock off the top without toppling the rest. David took aim and threw, but missed. His father smiled and shook out his hands. Shake off the idea that fear makes you weak, he said gently. True strength is not in your hands, but in the hands of God. And so his father sent him forward. Each lesson a stone laid with care and balanced by faith. David's third brother was a master of the sling, his aim sharp, his strikes fast. But skill wasn't learned in a day. It was built through practice, patience, and discipline. The workshop was filled with slings hanging on the walls like trophies. Stones of all shapes and sizes covered the floor, waiting to be chosen. But before David could learn to strike, he had to learn something else first. His task was not what he expected. Instead of throwing, he spent the day sorting stones, weighing them, learning their shape and size, each one different, yet each with a purpose. At last, his brother returned, nodding in approval. David was now ready for the target. A final lesson remained. True power doesn't come just from the hands, but from the heart. The greatest strikes are not made by strength alone, but by trust. As discipline and techniques developed, he shaped his aim. His strikes grew sharper. His shots found their mark. But skill alone was not enough to knock down his targets. Across the horizon, smoke rose like a warning. The weight of war had arrived. David watched as his three older brothers stood at the ready, their path set before them. The time had come for them to fight for their king. But David would not yet follow. For while war waged on the battlefield, challenges of a different kind would unfold in the quiet hills of home. The family looked toward the signs of war with concern. His parents entrusted David with a task, to bring provisions to his brothers and see how they fared. When David arrived, he saw two armies divided by a valley. On one side, hardened warriors, their hearts set on conquest. On the other, soldiers standing firm yet weary, their strength tested by fear. Among them stood David's three brothers. At this moment, a giant from the opposing army stood defiantly cursing God, his words filled with scorn. While all warriors trembled, David's heart burned within him. David spoke before the king, his words steady with conviction beyond his years. For he was not alone. He was in God's hands now. And so, armed with a shepherd's sling, his family's lessons, and his faith, he stepped into the valley. As the battlefield fell silent, David stood over the fallen giant, not as a warrior clad in armor, but as a shepherd. And so it was, that the boy who once tended sheep now ruled as a servant of God and a shepherd to his people.